Hello, awesome people. I hope that you are having an amazing day today. 6 years ago, on the 30th of December, was my first video for this channel. It's my 6th year anniversary, and I thought it would be fun for me to knock out my 6th year anniversary video for you folks. So what I'm going to have for you is a list of my 6 favorite videos, because it's my top 6 for you folks from the past few years and so forth. It's here on my cell phone, so if you see me looking down at my cell phone because it's a 22-point font and not giving you the eye contact that you deserve, that's the reason why for you folks. All right. So let's get ahead started. So my 6 favorite videos and reviews. My number 6 one is the forgotten classic from the 70s that people should read more. It's heavily influential. It's a huge. It was an appendix and by Gygax. That's how I came across it. It's super influential on games, on comics, on video games, on RPGs, through D&D, on modern fantasy. Love it so much. And that is, of course, Sterling Lanier's Hero's Journey. It's an absolute classic for you folks. It's set in the future in a post-apocalyptic Canada. Our guy is a psychic ranger, and he is keeping the journey safe. He's riding a psychic moose. His best friend is a psychic bear. I mean, he's got psychic powers. I mean, he's just so cool, right? It's just an absolute forgotten classic to my mind. And that's number 6. So you should go back and watch it more, because you should read that book rather than watch that video, right? So it's more of a forgotten classic, right? So that video hits my number 6 because the video is just okay, right? It's fine, but I think it's a great, and so I'm giving it a shout. Then at number 5 is my review of my favorite novel once when I read it the first time in college. It was my first year in grad school that I read it. It's an absolute classic. This is Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle's Lucifer's Hammer. I read it a second time and it became less my favorite because of how it's not the best thing ever. It was the first novel to replace Dracula. That was my favorite novel growing up when I read it. It's an absolute classic by Bram Stoker from the. I put horror and gothic horror on the map in a major way. Well, this one is a hard sci-fi. This team, once I saw this, I would go and pick up like The Gripping Hand, The Moat in God's Eye. I would grab a lot of other things. All the things are just absolute classics, in my opinion, from the 70s and others. Hard sci-fi stuff if you like that, and if you enjoy it. So that is my review, number 5 of my favorite novel once, and that is Lucifer's Hammer by Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle. All right, my number 4 favorite video is where I go over where many modern fantasy fans haven't heard of one of my favorite fantasy authors from the pulp era, Clark Ashton Smith. At the time, he was hugely popular. He wrote poetry, he wrote prose poetry, then he wrote prose for places like Weird Tales. He was one of the big 3 writers. His world, he's very unique because he had a didactic memory, and he read a dictionary as a kid, so he retained that knowledge. And so a lot of the words you'll have to just go look up or just use context. Great stuff. Had a very, very unique style, great world building, great classic, and so forth author. But at the time, and was one of the big 3, along with H.P. Lovecraft, who we remember today, and Robert E. Howard, the guy who created Conan, who we remember today, but not Clark Ashton Smith. So I have a video called "Why You've Never Heard of Clark Ashton Smith." I think it's pretty good. It's a few years ago, and so forth. So that's my 4th favorite video. And then now my top 3, top half of this top 6. So my number 3 one is my final, is another review for you folks. And this one, I think you guys, it's your favorite. None have had more views, and it's like not even close. It's like twice as many views. It's got more than 10,000 views, and so forth from a few years ago. I was in a reading of an older classics that are forgotten or heavily influential in some places, right? And then I came across this, and I picked it up in a novel form, and I read it. And this is, of course, Edward Bulwer-Lytton's Vril, The Power of the Coming Race for you folks. Edward Bulwer-Lytton, sorry, not Lytton, it's an L. So his novel it's set in the earth, and that Tom was reading a bunch of things set in like Hollow Earth stuff. And so forth. It's set in the subterranean worlds. It's great stuff, love it lots. And so if you haven't seen that review or read that, I'd recommend it. Because that's your favorite. All right, and then number 2 is my highest casing one. That's not a review for you folks. In here, I try to make the case for Lynn Carter being the most powerful and impactful editor in fantasy history with his Ballantine adult fantasy series. Because at the time, even though a lot of popular fantasy things like, Lord of the Rings were sort of still thought of as child stuff, you'll have, Lovecraft will try to say it shouldn't be. It should be treated as adult fiction too. In the short story, in the article. It's probably more of an essay than an article called On Fairy Stories. And then he also has other popular fantasy authors at the time too also agreed, like including one that came forward and so forth, also wrote an essay too that was published. And so they were writing and saying that the fantasy genre should be taken seriously by adults, not just for kids, as escapism sort of thing, right? And so this is the Ballantine Adult Fantasy Series is the first fantasy series of its kind that's aimed to adults. And Lynn Carter, as the editor, is doing a lot of republishing of various giants, like the aforementioned Clark Ashton Smith or H.P. Lovecraft fantasy things, right? And so he's reminding people of a lot of these things in the Ballantine Adult Fantasy Series. He's the first one. Does some great groundwork. He also finds some authors too, and rather than just reports like Catherine Kurtz and her Durrani series. So he's absolutely classic in my opinion, and the best and most influential editor in fantasy for that reason. And that video is called "The Case for Carter." You can take a look at it. And then my final one is my review. One of the first things I did of Jack London's The Iron Heel. The Iron Heel, no spoilers, but the idea here is it's set in a post-apocalyptic world after some people voted fairly, not for compromises, but fairly in America for a more socialist system. And there's an oligarchic pushback by the powers that be, who fear that they're going to lose their powers with this voting into more of a socialist system. So they take over in a government that's called the Iron Heel, and so forth. So that's basically what's happening in this short story. So it's a dystopia. It's the first modern dystopia short story novel, rather. Love it lots because it happened in. This sort of an oligarchy pushback was happening at the time for things like unions and such, like in my own America, in West Virginia, my state, and so forth. I talk about that too, like the mine wars and the Blair Mountain battle, where they were bombing miners, right? And they were killing miners at night with the Blue Moose Special and stuff like that too. So I really take this seriously, and I talk a lot about that was happening at the time, and it was all legal stuff, but they were still doing it, right? Similarly, we saw that happen in other countries too. So I think this was very much a thing that could happen, right? And I think that we're seeing that now. With people arguing on various sides that they would prefer a more dictatorial one that's more fair to their side of things, rather than a democracy that just votes for what the democracy wants, right? And so forth. So I think that's particularly cogent today, that review and that novel for you folks. Now, I don't agree with the message on it, but I still think that point is about, right? And so forth. So that's my review of Jack London's The Iron Heel for you folks. So there you are. So once again, here are my top 6 for you folks. Number 6 is my review of Sterling Lanier's Hero's Journey. My number 5 one is my review of Lucifer's Hammer by Jerry Pournelle and Larry Niven. Number 4 is where I make the case for Lynn Carter is the best. I'm sorry, that's the one about why you've never heard of Clark Ashton Smith. Number 3 is my review of Edward Bulwer-Lytton's of real. The Power of the Coming Race. Number 2 is my case for Carter. And then my number one is my review of Jack London's The Iron Heel for you folks. And so there are those are my top 6 for you folks. So as a reminder, this channel does reviews of older things from fantasy or horror or science fiction, and then also sometimes movies or serials, video games, that sort of thing too. So that's what it cares about. And that's where the title, the worst thing about new books, comes from, right? So basically that idea is where the passion for this channel comes from. It's a quote by a French philosopher, Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about them was that they kept us from reading the old ones, right? It's because of the older classics and such, right? And so you can see that and hear it in this, my top 6 videos. So if you like this, why not hit the subscribe button, the bell icon, if you're feeling frisky to be notified of my videos, the like button, and then let your friends know too so they can watch it and join the channel too. And then, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my video, right? Because we all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me, that's incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it so very, very much. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.